Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Emotions podcast. I'm so glad you're tuning in for today's episode. I really want to just kind of share my experience with feeling disgusted by other people's behavior because I just need to call myself out, to be honest, and hopefully maybe you resonate, maybe you don't, maybe you can relate to other people just irking you. Like everything they do just gets under your skin. What is that about? What's going on with that? Why is that happening? That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. So, being triggered by other people's behavior, let's say somebody made a comment and you're still thinking about that comment 3 days later because you're so irritated by what they said, right? Or maybe somebody did something to you at work or at school and it was kind of underhanded and it was kind of backhanded and you haven't spoken to that person, you haven't addressed it, you haven't communicated it. And so it's a week later and you're irritated at that person and anything that they say and anything that they do, your whole body is just irritated at them. This is disgust. Disgust is really there. It comes up when we're holding on to resentment, when we're frustrated with people, when we're irritated with people, and when our expectations aren't being met. That's essentially what we want to get to, the root of it. When we're feeling disgust, it's that our expectations are not being met. I expect you to act this way. I expect you to do these things. I expect you to behave a certain way because that's the kind of behavior that I think is appropriate. That's the kind of behavior that I think is right. And so this isn't an opportunity to now judge ourselves, which is what we typically do. To be honest, I know that when I get irritated by other people's behavior, and I then get irritated with myself that it's 3 days later and I'm still pissed about something, right? And so then I'm just piling on the disgust in a way of I expect myself to get over things easily. I expect myself to not make this a big deal. So what is expectation? Our expectations are kind of the models that we build around our world and our life. They are there in our minds, like the standards that we have, the rules that we have to keep ourselves safe, to make us feel like we have a handle on our lives. We understand how things work. We can expect what's going to happen because we've already decided that this is how things work and this is how people behave, et cetera, et cetera. Now, while that is great in theory, it's not that great in reality because people don't know what our expectations are. People have their own expectations, and people are going to be unpredictable in our lives. They're going to do things that surprise us, that catch us off guard, that irritate us. I learned a lot about disgust since becoming a mother, not because I'm disgusted by my child. Hold up, I love my daughter. But parenting and dealing with a young child that's not developed mentally, emotionally, physically can be really challenging because I'm used to having expectations for adults. I don't necessarily have these built in expectations for children. And so a lot of times I'm projecting my adult expectations onto my daughter, and I find myself getting really frustrated with her behavior. And then I have to step back and go, wait a minute, what expectations are you putting on her? What are you deciding that she's supposed to do, how she's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Where are these expectations coming from? Disgust is always an opportunity for us to look within at ourselves. It's an opportunity for us to question and challenge our own expectations. And it's a big opportunity for us to get honest with ourselves as well. So let's first talk about challenging our expectations because I just started off by saying our expectations are there in place. We create them to feel safe in our world, to feel like we have control of things, we have a handle on things. That's always going to happen. Our subconscious is naturally deciding things so that we can predict things, so that life can be somewhat predictable and routine and ordinary. But what we have to remember is that while these are standards that we're creating subconsciously, right? These are not fixed standards that everyone is going to comply with. Our expectations, I like to phrase it when I'm working with my clients, is look at your expectations as your preferences. This is how I would like things to go. This is how I would like things to be. The biggest thing with disgust is that it just consumes our whole body. There's like a rigidness to it. And we really need to soften around it. When we honor that the disgust is there and we say, okay, I'm really irritated right now. I'm really disappointed. I'm feeling really resentful. I need to check my expectations right now. And we go through our process, like the Mighty Emotions method. We go through our process of honoring what we're physically feeling first to regulate on the physical level so that we can come to a space of being open and receptive to changing our mind, to challenging our thoughts. So if I have these expectations of my child to behave like an adult, and she's clearly not because she's not an adult, then I know I need to pause, I need to step back, I need to say, what are realistic expectations for a child of her age? What can I reasonably expect from her? Shifting those expectations is what surrender is in that situation. That's how we soften in a situation. So, for example, I had a situation recently where I was really disgusted at the behavior of some people. And I didn't realize I had these expectations until the situation happened. Now, what was going on? It was kind of their expectations clashing with mine, right? And they had issues with how I was doing certain things and the boundaries that I had around my life. And I realized through that I had these expectations that everybody understands what I'm going through as a busy working mom. And it turns out, surprise, that's not true. This person in particular doesn't have any children, has never had children, so doesn't understand the experience of a busy working mom. And yet I had this expectation somehow that they would know. And it was more so the frustration in their behavior. The fact is, their behavior was clashing with my expectations. Reality, clashing with expectation equals disgust. It's like, wait a minute, as upsetting as their behavior was, it's only upsetting when I prop it up against the expectation that they're supposed to, they ought to, they must understand what my circumstances are. And the reality is, no, that's not a realistic expectation. I'm just driving myself crazy by holding on to that expectation and holding them to that impossible standard. Trust me, before I was a mom, there was no way I could understand what moms went through. It was an opportunity for me to soften, for me to have some compassion for myself, for them, right? By saying, wait a minute, what are realistic expectations here? Okay, I can't expect them to understand this. So, what then? Well, it comes down to communicating your expectations, communicating where they've hurt you, communicating where they've disappointed you, telling them what you need from them. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Not everyone is going to understand when you communicate your expectations to them. Not everyone is going to care. Not everyone is going to say, you know what? Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from now. I'm sorry. Right. So we're going to get into forgiveness in a whole other episode. But this is where forgiveness can be incredibly powerful because forgiveness is essentially saying, I am going to release myself from this dynamic with you. I'm going to give closure to myself. And again, we'll do another episode on forgiveness so that I can expand upon that more. But forgiveness is really surrendering to what is, right? It's surrendering to what has been. This interaction happened. This is how they reacted. Okay, I can't change the past. That's essentially where we come with forgiveness is we stop trying to change the past from the present and the future and we find a way forward or find a different way forward. So all of this, combining this, communicating your needs, communicating what you struggle with, finding that forgiveness within yourself, learning how to forgive, right? These are really important ways that we can soften and the disgust is no longer this overwhelming, frustrated, irritated feeling. It's like I've gotten clear on what bothered me, what my expectations were. I recognize that they're not realistic, right? I talk to you about them. I ask for what I need. I ask for your understanding and your compassion. Whether or not you give it to me is a whole other thing, right? But I approach you and I ask for your understanding and your compassion. And then the other part of being disgusted is where we're not getting really honest with ourselves, where we have to get honest with ourselves. So this is kind of a different version of disgust, a different way that disgust manifests. If we see somebody doing something to somebody else, or saying something that we disagree with, not directly to us, but voicing an opinion that we disagree with, or behaving in a certain way that we disagree with. We can also be triggered by that at times. You see this a lot on social media where someone will post something and be absolutely vilified and attacked for it because so many people feel this outrage and this disgust, and they feel entitled to lash out as a result of this. And this can happen in our everyday life too. We can be in a work setting or a school setting, or even at a lot of the times in a family dynamic. Our sibling could do something, or our parents could do something, and it might not even be directly to us, but we get so triggered by it and so disgusted by it. Like, how dare they do that thing? A lot of judgment, there's a lot of criticism. Now, there's a very real difference between disagreeing with someone's behavior and having a visceral feeling of disgust. So, again, it goes back to that expectation, how you would like them to behave, addressing that. And then there's another piece to address that, which is like looking at yourself really honestly and asking, is there a part of me that I see in that? Did I behave that way at one point in my life and decide that that was horrible? Is that something I'm judging myself for? And that's why I'm judging them so strongly? Like, what is really going on with that trigger? And as always, where have I been lying to myself? I'm just going to come out and say it. There's a lot of times we're just flat out denying what we need. We're lying to ourselves. And so when we are disgusted and triggered and irritated by somebody, that can be holding a mirror up to us where we haven't met our own expectations, either in the present or in the past. And so that is a moment of self forgiveness. So disgust always comes back to really looking at our expectations, understanding that, yes, this is the way I wish that the world worked. This is the way that I wish people carry themselves. This is the way I wish they behaved. This is the way I wish I behaved. But we cannot go back and change the past. And so we go through the process of forgiveness. We soften, we surrender, we communicate what we need to communicate. And in the case of, somebody doing something that's not directly to us, it's not really our place to say, hey, don't do this, right? That's not what I mean by communicating. It's more so saying, hey, I understand that we have different situations, we have different circumstances here, but I would really love it if you could have some understanding and compassion for me going through what I'm going through, or vice versa. We extend compassion and tolerance to somebody else who might be going through something. It really comes back to us taking control of our irritation, not using it as an excuse to lash out. Because when we're disgusted, we can really want to lash out. That's the very, very natural human reaction and response to feeling disgust. We can want to retaliate, we can want to get back at them. But we have to take a step back and understand where we need to look within. We need to look at our own faults. We need to look and get honest with ourselves about where we need something that we're not getting. Sometimes, and this is the third point that I wanted to make, sometimes disgust is there because we're just at our window of tolerance. Like, we just don't have any capacity because our needs have been neglected for so long that the slightest thing pisses us off, right? And it's just because we're overtired or we're overworked or we haven't connected with ourselves in a while. We haven't connected with other people in a while. We feel like we have no purpose in our life and we're just kind of aimlessly wandering around. These kind of moments are really like a self wake up call moment when little things are irritating us, and it's not because someone did something directly to us, and it's not necessarily because we are seeing ourselves reflected in that behavior. The third thing to look at is, am I tired? Did I eat today? Am I thirsty? Literally, where have I not been taking care of myself? Maybe I need to refuel. Maybe I need to focus on me right now. Okay. So it's never about using our emotions as an excuse to hurt other people, right? It's always, always, always about how can I go back and look within and see where I need to check myself before I wreck myself. I couldn't help it. So, with that, I hope that this episode helps you. It has certainly helped me to just talk through this with you and remind myself about the importance of softening when I experience disgust, and the importance of asking myself, is this other person aware of my expectations? Have I actually communicated it with them? And are they capable of understanding it and extending compassion to me. Two, is this pissing me off and irritating me because I'm kind of judging myself around it and I need to kind of look within and forgive myself somehow? And three, is it irritating me and pissing me off because I'm just stretched to my limit? And do I need to stop and actually take care of myself? And before I go, I'm going to read from the chapter on disgust in my book, Outrunning Your Emotions, because in it, at the end, I make a really important point that I don't want to leave out of here. Lastly, if all else fails, use humor. Maybe we are taking life too seriously. Maybe we are taking things too personally. Find a way to laugh at some element of the situation if you can. Humor can give us perspective. Approaching things lightly where possible can diffuse the heaviness of a situation. When we can practice gentle detachment from our expectations, it helps us respond more easily to challenging circumstances, not be consumed by them. And that's the biggest thing, right? Sometimes we're stretched, sometimes everything seems heavier than it actually is. And we need to laugh and we need to joke and we need to just make light of the situation and we need to forgive and we need to soften and we need to move forward. Disgust is not there to hold us back. It is there to wake us up and get us to take aligned action, like all of our emotions. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you can remember the next time you're triggered and you're irritated to check in with one of these three things. And if you want to talk further with me, feel free to use the link below to join a free member community where I share articles, I share tips, I answer your questions, I help you with anything that you're going through and you're struggling with, and it's completely free. I just want a space where we can start normalizing, embracing our emotions, normalizing the things that we're going through, and we can actually get ongoing emotional support in that way. So I would love to have you join us in there. The link is below. I hope that you will tune in for the next episode. And until then, keep being gentle with yourself.